I'm Gary, 36, locksmith by trade and apparently the only person in my family who knows what the words boundaries and loyalty actually mean. The first time I realized my family saw me as a wallet with hands was during a Sunday dinner. Just the four of us, Mom, Dad, my sister Lauren, and me, sitting around the same table I used to do math homework on while Mom made meatloaf and Dad watched football on mute. Dad had just poured his second glass of wine when he said, "You know you're lucky, Gary. If it wasn't for us, you'd still be cutting keys in the back of a hardware store." I stopped mid-bite. "I built the business," I said. "With my van." He shot back. "With my tools. Don't forget who gave you your start." Mom reached across the table, patted his hand. "He's just sensitive," she said. Lauren smirked, twirling her wine glass like a Bond villain. "Come on, Mom. Gary acts like he did it all alone. He forgets who his family is until he needs something." That made me laugh. Not like a ha-ha funny laugh. More like sharp and hollow, the kind that makes your throat taste like metal. "When?" I asked. "Have I ever needed anything from you?" Lauren blinked like I'd asked her to solve calculus in her head. "Well, you will. When Dad's gone, when Grandma's estate comes through, you'll be glad we handled everything." That was the first crack. The second came when Grandma got sick. I was the one who brought her groceries, installed her peephole, fixed the front lock so it didn't stick. I was the one she handed a manila folder to one night, while I was on my knees fixing her door frame. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I've updated my will. Grandma, I don't need to see that." "You do," she insisted. "The house goes to you," I argued. She didn't budge. "Your mom will sell it, and hand every penny to your sister and your father. You're the one who keeps this place standing." She passed 6 months later. At the funeral, my dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry about the boring legal stuff. Your mother and I will handle the estate." I told him Grandma had already spoken to me. Told him the house was mine. That's when his face turned into something between confusion and fury. She was confused at the end. He muttered. Mom chimed in too fast. "Honey, you know she wasn't herself." But I had the email. From her. From her lawyer. With my name on the house. My name on the savings account. And suddenly, the air in the room got heavy. I saw it in their eyes. That flash of panic you only get when someone you're trying to outmaneuver flips the board over. They changed the locks on her house the very next day. Not upgraded. Changed. To cheap junk I'd never install for a paying client. And they forgot one thing. I was the locksmith. I didn't need to break in. I already knew what to look for. But instead of prying the door open like some angry son in a soap opera, I made one call. To Grandma's lawyer. The man she trusted. The one who left me 3 voicemails asking why I hadn't signed the revised documents the family had agreed on. I hadn't seen them. Because I wasn't invited. Because, apparently, my parents and sister thought if they just kept me out of the loop long enough, they could rewrite history. But Grandma knew better. So did I. That's when I wrote the letter. 10 years of dates. Amounts. Promises. Bank transfers labeled Mom rent, and Dad truck. Text that said, "We'll pay you back. Remember, the house will be yours someday anyway." And I ended it with one sentence. If the court chooses to honor the forged document, I formally withdraw from all informal financial support of my parents and sister. 2 weeks later, at the probate hearing, my father stood tall, smug. My sister looked like she'd already bought new throw pillows for the house. My mother refused to meet my eyes. "You'll never touch that money again," Dad muttered. "That's right," Lauren added. "He doesn't deserve a cent," Mom whispered. Then the judge opened my letter. And laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, startled laugh that echoed through the courtroom like someone had dropped a plate of glass. He leaned back and said, "Oh, this is good." And just like that, the panic I'd seen before came rushing back into their faces. The judge took his time. He adjusted his glasses like he was about to deliver a monologue, then said, "Mr. Collins has provided extensive financial documentation indicating long-term support of his family, including the deceased. That support appears to have been made under verbal agreements referencing future inheritance." He paused. Looked at my dad. "Which makes your attempt to file a contradictory will, one submitted solely by a family friend with no direct witness from a licensed attorney, Suspect, at best. My dad actually sputtered. Like real-life cartoon sputtering. Your Honor, that document is legitimate. It's not. The judge cut in. The handwriting expert has already submitted a preliminary report. The signature is inconsistent with previous verified samples. The date on the revision does not align with the deceased's hospital stay. Furthermore, he flipped another page. The notarization was conducted by a Mr. Daniel K., a longtime friend of yours, with no legal or professional connection to the estate. Dad tried again. My mother-in-law wanted things to be equal. She wrote otherwise. The judge snapped. In a legally recognized format. Witnessed. Dated. Digitally verified. And she emailed it to both Mr. Collins and her estate attorney, who can testify to its authenticity. Lauren raised her hand like we were in elementary school. Excuse me, Your Honor, but I think Gary is just doing this to punish us. He's doing this, the judge said coolly, because he was excluded, lied to, and financially exploited. And I don't use that word lightly. My mother flinched like she'd been slapped. The judge turned back to me. Mr. Collins, I'm ordering a temporary injunction on any further action taken regarding the estate, pending a full review of your documentation and the handwriting analysis. Do you have any further requests at this time? I stood up, throat dry. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like the locks on the house changed until this is resolved. I don't feel confident the current keyholders will respect the integrity of the property. Dad snorted. He's a locksmith. Of course he wants the locks changed. The judge didn't even blink. And that makes him exactly the right person to do it. Outside the courtroom, Lauren stormed ahead, muttering to Mom. Dad fell behind. For a second, he looked at me, like really looked at me. His jaw clenched. Then he said the same thing he'd texted me weeks earlier. You're being petty. I smiled, just a little. No, Dad. I'm being legal. That night, I drove straight to Grandma's house. The porch light was still busted. A wind chime clanged like a warning. I pulled out a brand new lock cylinder from my bag, one I'd been saving for a client who ghosted me. Seemed fitting. The second I clicked the old junk lock out of the knob and dropped it into the trash, something shifted in my chest. Like this tight, iron band feeling finally let go. Inside, the house smelled like dust and lavender, like no one had lived or dared breathe there in months. I opened the windows, turned on the heat, sat on her old floral couch, and I cried. Not from sadness. Not even from anger. Just the exhaustion of someone who's been holding a weight too long and finally sets it down. The next day, I hired a security system installer and left a note on the door. Private residence. Legal dispute in progress. No entry without permission. Mom texted an hour later. What are you doing? Your father is furious. This is your grandmother's house. I texted back. I know. She left it to me. She didn't respond. Over the next week, I moved slowly. Carefully. I brought over a few things from my apartment. A kettle. A framed photo of Grandma and me at her birthday 2 years ago. I fixed the sagging floorboard near the hallway. I labeled the breaker box. I changed the deadbolt on the back door just because I didn't like the way it clicked. And through it all, not a word from Dad. Until the envelope arrived. Certified mail. From a new lawyer. Inside, a formal petition to challenge the will. Alleging undue influence. Mental incompetence. A request to appoint a third-party trustee. Guess who they nominated? Lauren. I read the first paragraph, then laughed so hard I nearly dropped the folder. They were still trying to lock me out. But this time? I had the only keys. The gloves came off. Lauren's lawyer, some guy whose bio photo screamed litigator by day, wine influencer by night, sent me a formal request to cease occupancy of the property pending court review. Attached were statements from both of my parents, written like press releases, full of noble concern, theatrical worry, and zero acknowledgement of reality. Lauren's was the piece de resistance. 3 pages, single-spaced, all about how she had been Grandma's emotional support, she had always intended to help with the house, and I had shown controlling behavior since adolescence. Controlling behavior? I once got grounded at 17 for installing a deadbolt on my bedroom door because Lauren kept borrowing my laptop to look up crystal healing recipes. And here she was, trying to evict me from the house Grandma left me in writing. I handed the whole packet to my attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Carla who read Lauren's statement twice, raised an eyebrow, and muttered, "Cute. They think probate court is community theater." We filed our own response, attaching Grandma's email again, my documentation, the initial will, and a signed statement from her former neighbor, a retired nurse, who had seen me at the house almost weekly, and Lauren. Twice, both times in heels and filming herself with a selfie stick. Meanwhile, I kept working. Fixing locks. Rekeying storefronts. Answering midnight calls from bar owners who'd lost their keys after too many rounds of just one more. But something had shifted. I started saying no. No to the neighbor who asked for a free garage code reset. Since you're already out here. No to the regular who always forgot her wallet but promised a Venmo later that never came. No to a rush job from a guy who smirked and said, "You look like the kind of man who helps out family." "You know, loyal," I said. "I am loyal. To people who don't lie to courts." He didn't get it. But a week later, I got something else. A phone call. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Lauren. Her voice was syrupy. Practiced. "Hey, Gary. So, we've been thinking, and maybe we all rushed into this. Maybe things got out of hand. Look, I know it's been stressful, but we're family, right? We can still figure this out. Let's meet. Just you and me. No lawyers." She ended with, "You know how much Grandma meant to me." I hit replay. Just to make sure I heard her say me without choking. Then I forwarded the voicemail to Carla and went for a run. 3 miles, headphones blasting, sneakers slapping concrete like punctuation. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to outrun the wait. When I got home, I found something in the mailbox. A postcard. No stamp. Hand-delivered. A photo of a beach in Bali. On the back, in loopy handwriting. "Wish you were more generous. Family means sharing. Love, Lauren." I flipped it over. Studied the printed image. The beach was beautiful. But all I could think was, she doesn't even live near a beach. She drove here. Just to stuff that in my mailbox. That night, I called the alarm company and added a motion sensor to the front walkway. Then I programmed a new code. Not 1234 like Grandma always used. Something harder to guess. Something no one else knew. The date of the first locksmith job I ever booked on my own. Because this whole mess, was no longer about inheritance. It was about ownership. Of property, yes. But also of dignity. Of history. Of truth. Carla called the next morning. "Prep for a storm," she said. "Your father's petition added a claim that you manipulated the will while Grandma was under your care. He says you isolated her." My breath caught. "That's a lie." "I know," Carla said. "We'll prove it. But get ready, they're going nuclear." I looked around the living room. The same armchair Grandma used to fall asleep in during game shows. The Afghan she'd crocheted in colors that never matched but somehow worked. The framed photo of us from my graduation, her smile so wide it cracked the picture glass. I wasn't scared. I was angry. They were rewriting the story. But I still had the pen. The court date loomed like a thunderhead. Every day closer, my phone buzzed with some new brand of nonsense. A friendly reminder, from their lawyer to vacate the property. A passive-aggressive group text from Mom. "Hope you're taking good care of the house." It meant a lot to Grandma. To all of us. A private message from one of Lauren's old high school friends I hadn't spoken to in years. "She says you're going through something. Hope you find peace." Yeah, peace. Just me and the forged will. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. I cleaned. I vacuumed like the carpet had insulted me. I rewired the porch light. I even organized Grandma's spice rack alphabetically, because I needed some part of this house to feel orderly. Then I found the envelope. Tucked behind the flower jar, like she'd hidden it on purpose. It was addressed to me. Just Gary, in Grandma's crooked handwriting, the G that always looped too high and curled like a fishing hook. Inside, a note. Just one sentence. "Don't let them tell my story for me. No. Love, Gran." No explanation. Just that. It hit me like a freight train. I sat down on the kitchen floor, note in hand, and whispered, "I won't." The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Probate Division, county courthouse. Beige walls, buzzing lights, and a judge with half-moons under his eyes like he hadn't slept since the Clinton administration. My parents came in first. Dad in his suit that never quite fit anymore. Mom in pearls, the same pair she wore to Grandma's funeral. Lauren strolled in last, high heels tapping, hair perfect, like it was her personal red carpet. Me? Work boots, clean jeans, button-down shirt. The only thing I ironed was my resolve. Carla leaned over. You good? Better than they're expecting. The judge started with the basics. Date of death. Legal standing. Then, there are two competing versions of the will. We'll hear arguments as to which should be upheld. Lauren's lawyer stood first. He launched into a speech so polished I could see my reflection in it. Our clients, the daughter and granddaughter of the deceased, submit that the most recent document reflects her final, true wishes. The prior version, while technically valid, does not represent her evolved intent to treat her family equitably. Equitably. As if stealing from the one person who kept her fridge stocked was fair game if you smiled while doing it. Carla stood. Cool. Professional. Lethal. My client, she said, has provided proof of direct communication with the deceased, consistent caretaking duties, and financial documentation supporting his claim that promises were made, verbally, textually, and contextually, that this house was intended as repayment, recognition, and a refuge. She laid down a binder with a thud. These are labeled chronologically, including bank statements, photographs, voicemails, and notarized emails. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is that the note from the neighbor? Yes, Your Honor, Carla said. It corroborates a pattern of behavior consistent with the will my client received months prior to the disputed revision. Lauren's lawyer objected, claiming hearsay. The judge waved him off. We'll allow it. Then he turned to me. Mr. Collins, would you like to speak? My throat was dry, but I stood. My grandmother was deliberate. She reused aluminum foil. She kept every receipt. If she changed her will, it would have been with the same care she used to label her Tupperware. A few quiet chuckles. Even the judge cracked a smile. She told me I was getting the house. She told me it wasn't about favoritism. It was about showing up. I paused, eyes locked on my father. I paid your mortgage. I fixed your doors. I changed your locks. Not once did I ask for repayment. But I never expected you to take the only thing Grandma wanted me to have. Mom looked away. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking you to honor her actual voice, not the version my family forged in ink and lies. The judge nodded, quietly impressed. Thank you? He asked a few follow-up questions. Carla answered. Lauren's lawyer tried to object to one of the screenshots, claiming it was out of context. And the judge said dryly, so are most of your client's statements. Then came the bombshell. Carla submitted Grandma's medical records, including dosage logs. On the day she allegedly signed the new will, she was on medication strong enough to make her forget her own address. The judge tapped the gavel once. I'll issue a formal ruling in 48 hours. Until then, no party is to alter, enter, or represent possession of the estate property. Mr. Collins retains temporary stewardship. The room exploded. Well, mostly my father. This is an insult. That house was meant for family. The judge didn't blink. He is family. And he's the only one acting like it. Outside the courtroom, I passed Lauren without looking. She hissed, "You're making a mistake." I stopped. Turned. No, Lauren. I'm correcting one. She opened her mouth, probably to throw a tantrum in designer heels, but I walked away before she could get the words out. Back at the house, I put Grandma's note in a frame. Set it on the mantel. Then I opened the windows and let the air in. 48 hours later, the ruling came in. The judge's written decision was crisp, clinical, and devastating for them. The original will stands. All assets transferred to Gary Collins. The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud and undue influence regarding the disputed document. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because it felt like confirmation that I wasn't crazy for fighting so damn hard to be heard. The fallout was immediate. Lauren posted a thinly veiled rant on Instagram. Some people use dead relatives to settle scores. Hope your new porch is worth the betrayal. Mom called once. I didn't pick up. Dad sent a 2-word text. Well played. I didn't answer that either. Instead, I changed the locks. Again. Something better. Stronger. A system Grandma would have appreciated: remote alerts, smart access, backup keys coded in a way only I could crack. Then I poured a coffee, walked the perimeter, and let the quiet sink in. That night, I sat on the front porch with Grandma's old quilt on my lap. The same porch where I'd helped her sort groceries. The same porch where she told me not to let them rewrite her story. I hadn't. And now this home, this place full of echoes and effort, was mine. Not because I took it. Because I stayed. Because I showed up. Because I didn't walk away when they slammed the door. People ask if I regret how it ended with my family. I don't. I didn't slam the door shut. I just locked it until they learn how to knock with respect. And the only key left? Is mine.